My name is Gary, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Mindset Growth Podcast. I'm excited to have you join us here today. I have Heather, my co-host, with me.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. We're going to do something a little different today.
I know. I love doing different stuff.
This is going to be the Gary and Heather talk show.
Okay, let's talk. What do you want to talk about?
We often have people ask us, what the story is behind our coaching and how did that all develop and what motivates us and things like that. So I think we're going to dive into this here just a little bit, and we're going to give just some stories and talk about some things that really shaped our lives to lead us to this point.
Our listeners might not know this, but Gary is very good at stories, so I'm sure we're in for a treat here.
I don't know. We're going to find out. It seems like I do talk to people, and then they're always like, you've had a very eventful life. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to challenge anyone listening to this that more than likely they have had just nearly as an eventful life, or possibly more so yet than me. I think the thing that I have tried to really focus on over the last number of years is take those experiences as I recount them and try to leverage some information or a lesson out of it and figure out what I can learn from it and use that to maybe help others as well as myself.
That's interesting. We were having a conversation before we got on here, and I'm one of those people that I'm like, I really don't have anything to talk about. My life it's been what it's been. I've never put myself out there for failures really to learn from. I mean, have I had them? Absolutely. Are there things that I would look back on and do differently? 100%. But I haven't had the level of putting myself out there as most of our listeners have. So I feel like I don't have a lot to contribute sometimes. And, in this conversation, you're like, well, but Heather, think about when you did this and you did this. Oh, yeah, I guess that was kind of unique. Okay. So
it does shape us.
Yeah.
It certainly shapes us. And I think one thing that we talk about, because I know you're a DISC certified coach as well.
I am.
And DISC is just, for the audience that hasn't heard about that, is just a one of many personality assessment tools. Mm-hmm. And that's the one we choose to use to help companies kind of make sure they've got people in the right place, use it as a teaching tool with companies to maybe have employees understand each other. Because
yes, we've done it the employee and the business route, but I've also done it with couples to help them understand each other. And I believe you've done it with the church group as well. I mean, there's
Bible
so many different
groups, men's groups. So there's many ways that we can learn. And really that tool is all about educating, again, ourselves about what makes us function and tick. And sometimes when people upset us, they're not trying to at all. It's just more or less a natural or a nature thing. And I bring that up to lead us on into the next step. And it is simply through DISC, they teach us a lot. And this is with any personality assessment, that we are made up of how we act and behave and the things we like. Our behaviors come from three elements. The first one is just the childhood and the environment in which we grew up in. So we're going to talk about both of those, for yours and mine, on this podcast. And then the third is just the DNA. Everybody has two parents. Hopefully you know them, but sometimes there's surrounding circumstances you don't. It could be adoption and things, but still there's a DNA that makes us up physically and will affect us, and that'll be a second component to it. And the third component that we work in the space of a lot is our current environment.
Right.
So that's the one that often we have more control over, and we can really influence how we behave, what our results are, and how we react to situations, how we serve others, all of that. So that's a big piece of it. Just keep that in mind as we go through this. I'm going to dive into something that when I speak often and when I work with people, most often my conversations and the encouragement I'm giving them to maybe consider certain things or not to consider them. And there is a difference when I talk about even that right there, rather than telling somebody what to do or coaching them in a way to where they can improve or make better decisions. There's a big difference between being a consultant, and a coach.
Right.
And we certainly do both. Some of the things that we do certainly fall.
Why don't you, and I know in a previous episode we spoke about this, but why don't you go ahead and expand on that a little bit?
Okay. A consultant will come into a company, analyze the overall demographic of what it is, scope of work they're trying to accomplish, and help them basically lay out a plan with steps to follow to improve systems and processes. A lot of large organizations use consultants. Then they have maybe a change in management, and they'll bring in yet another consulting firm and change all their other, processes a different way, because that's the type of leader that person they have now. From a coaching perspective, if you're an athlete and you have played any sports at all at any level, the goal of your coach should be to help you reach the best potential that you have in that particular sport, whatever it is you're trying to do, whether it's drama, speech, basketball, baseball, any of those things. That's what a coach does, is helps you reach your full potential in that.
Yep.
And so as you go from elementary, high school, college, whatever levels you play, those things will keep elevating themselves. As a coach, I feel a high responsibility to help people in their personal and professional lives to develop and reach their potential. And the interesting part is that from a third-party perspective, I don't have the emotion. You don't have the emotion tied to it either.
Right.
And so it helps us give a more accurate perspective than if you have somebody who's directly involved in the situation.
Right. And this we mentioned on our last podcast too. When you're in it, you're so close, you just can't see what's going on. You can't see the big picture. And most of the time you don't realize that. So once you get that outside perspective, that whole picture of what's going on, so many things can open up for you.
So one thing that's that I'd like to challenge people with, there's some of us, I do not anymore. There was a period of my life I probably did more so. People will operate in a crisis mode. They're most content when there's just chaos and drama. And a lot of times it's just lack of organization or prioritization. And it's just a matter of sorting a lot of those things out. And then otherwise life starts happening to you instead of for you. And so if you're that type of person, rather than instantly reacting, one of the things I also challenge people to do is count to 10. And then if you can wait, just step away and make the decision tomorrow. Don't even react. But when you're in reaction mode, it's just like it just escalates and speeds up. You missed your first appointment or were late to it because of something happening. Find a way to reset and get back in that groove. But we're digressing and getting into some other things. So people often ask, how did I get into this? I think it chose me. I don't think I chose this route, but I do know that my whole life was built around this, and I was created for this very reason. I was a late bloomer, no doubt. I think it's very important for people to figure out what their we talk about it. What is their why, or maybe their mission statement or their purpose statement, depending on author you follow, you're going to have different versions of that. But once you know in life what it is that you want to achieve and accomplish and why you're placed on this earth, that will answer a lot of questions for a lot of people. That's a very vital step once you understand that. But then we can go back and start to take our experiences and develop our talent in doing what it is that we were created to do. And when I talk about failures, one of the very first ones that come to my mind that I'm just going to share, it was very simple, but I think people have these same experiences in their lives or very similar to this. I was in 5th grade. I have an older brother that was in 8th grade, and I went to a small country school. Mm-hmm. He had a pretty good group of friends. As a 5th grader, I'm looking up and admiring these older boys, and I'm seeing them, as typically older kids do. They can start to make some more decisions. And I decide, for whatever reason, the case was that I was going to lie about a situation I was in because I think I had some homework or something, and I lied about it. And so I told them this is what the teacher had asked me to do or told me I needed to do. And I'm thinking these guys are going to get me out of my homework, whatever it was, which they promptly, because I'm their buddy's little brother, one in particular didn't have a little brother and always kind of treated me as one. They go straight to the teacher and say, this is crap that you're treating him this way. Well, the teacher probably did the right thing that day. He said, no, here's what happened. And he blew my cover. So then they come back and let me know that I was, I had lied to them and they didn't appreciate it. And I was so humiliated. Like, as I tell this story today, I feel humiliated. Not awfully like I once did, but it bothers me that at that age, I gave up my integrity because I thought I had friends that could manipulate situations for me. Having said that, it was such a powerful moment in my life because it's taught me what integrity is and what it can do if you have it or don't have it. Because to this day, when I think of this story, I always wonder if those friends ever really trusted me again. If they today think about that situation when they think of me. I'm sure they don't. But it's impactful.
Likely not, but I know what you're talking about. I had a situation in high school where it was for an English class, and we had to write what we would gift of ourselves to other students. And to one of the other students who I was friends with, I thought very highly of, and we had a very humorous relationship, I guess. We gave each other a hard time often. And what I gifted him was something that I thought I was being funny. I thought he would get it. But looking back and right after I said it, it was just hurtful. And whenever I can still think of that to this day, and it still bothers me. Does he think about it? Probably not. But I learned from that experience that there's a time to joke, to have fun. But to do that in a setting where it's in front of a whole class and other people probably don't understand that relationship, it's just not a time or place for it. And that still bothers me.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, words do make a difference. I know there's that saying out there that says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's not true. I mean, when I was young, we all want to be young and funny and macho, and I guess maybe you didn't want to be macho.
I did not want to be macho. No.
But it's we think we can get away with those things, but some of those things will carry for the rest of our life. Both of those experiences, though, make a difference on how we work with people today. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward a little bit for myself, really had a very idyllic childhood. I, grew up in the country on a farm with livestock, row crops. We all knew how to work. It was that Mayberry neighborhood that if the neighbor needed help, you didn't get paid, you went and helped. Likewise, we needed help, they would come help us. A very tiny town, a mile and a half away, we could ride our bikes to. We could, I remember at, 8, 9, 10 years old driving the farm pickup, and I was so short, I had to push the seat all the way forward and then sit on the front edge and look between the dashboard and the steering wheel.
Seems safe.
It was, because there wasn't much traffic, and the guy that owned the feed store always laughed. He said, I knew, it was one of the kids when the truck was coming and there was no driver in it. But, that was just, it was one of those things. If we screwed up, though, the neighborhood would make sure our parents knew probably before we got home.
Yeah.
But, there was a day that all changed, and I was not 15 very long, just a couple of weeks, and then I had lost my father. And it was just a stark contrast of what I experienced in the next few years from that point. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just the community, maybe the religious culture I was in, I know didn't react to that well, didn't lend any support. And it led me, for those of you familiar with the term, it led me to be shunned, within another 4 or 5 weeks of burying my father. And as a 15-year-old, you become very angry and you don't understand those things. So that was so impactful and so crippling for the next couple of years to experience that. But as I experienced that, I started a personal growth journey. And that journey is probably something I'll always be on. I don't think anybody's ever finished growing. But that journey is what finally, I lose my father. A month later, I'm shunned. Now chaos ensues on the farm because, we have this vacancy of my father as a father figure. There's 3 younger siblings and then myself and an older brother at home, 18 and under. There were 5 of us. And so we're all fighting for our own power and control because of the void that my father left. Right. It led me to a point that summer where I left and went to a place I'd never been before. And I went there contemplating, whether I would live or die. And as I sat under that tree for about 3-4 hours that day, the words of my father rang in my head. And I want everybody listening to be so aware of this, the power of words. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but my father and I had a very close, great relationship, and he was the most influential person in my life to this day. And it seems maybe odd that I only had him 15 years, and I can say that, but I certainly wouldn't be alive if it weren't for him. So, he just said that someday you're going to accomplish great things. You're going to have a beautiful family. And as I sat there, I knew that if I did what I humanly wanted to do, as I was breaking down, there was no way that I could accomplish everything he told me I was going to accomplish. And so he is the one who saved me that day.
Right.
And I just challenge everybody with that, man. Reach out, build that relationship with your kids, build it with your coworkers, with your friends. Back to your point, I'm sure your friend doesn't probably think of those words. But
I'm sure he doesn't.
But if you think about it, the words you say, gosh, it literally can be life-changing or maybe life-saving.
Right. Yeah. I had a bit of a different childhood growing up, much different really, but I had the modern conveniences of television. Right. And but what I did not have was a parent behind me saying, you can do this.
Right.
What do you want to do with your life?
Right.
That wasn't in our daily lives. So kids remember that too.
Yes, they do. You were left to figure a lot of that out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean we don't love our parents, but it does.
Right.
It's a challenge to support your kids.
Yeah.
For sure. So as time goes on, I think we look at each of these steps. At 15 years old, also, my father did some custom farming for others. That fell on me. I was the bill collector. I did the work. Looking back, it was a responsibility I probably didn't do too gracefully. In fact, I know I didn't. It was probably one of my most embarrassing moments of how I collected money.
Can I
Yes.
interject a little humor here? What I picture when you say this, when in another life, at another job, when someone wasn't paying their bill, we had the option to put this little stamp on their invoice when we sent it to them. And it was this really like scrawny looking guy with these really big boxing gloves on his hands. Like, you're getting really rough. Like, send money now or else. So you remind me of that.
Well, I was a scrawny little guy, that was for sure. But I don't think I come off that way anymore.
Okay.
So, but no, that was, it really taught me business at an early age, because at 15, I was buying supplies and
people took you more seriously than
they had to.
yeah.
Because I was, that was the position I was in. So fast forward to 21, I became self-employed, and I have been, and I've owned probably more businesses than recommended, but I don't regret any of them. I've learned so much. And then I was fortunate enough to transition into insurance for 25 years, where I worked with a lot of small businesses on a daily basis, doing a lot of insurance for small businesses. So I got such a variety of that. And
separately, I'm Gage.
And I'm Bontrager.
Together, we are Gage Bontrager Consulting.
We work on changing your mindset,
Developing leaders,
building systems and processes,
helping you grow personally and professionally,
to achieve the success that you want personally and professionally.
however you choose to define success for you.
Reach out to us and follow us on social media, or look us up on the website, and that will put you on a path to achieve what is missing in your life.
Thanks for watching this episode of Mindset Growth Podcast.
Just real quick for people listening, if you're curious about some of my experiences, I left the farm to become a mechanic, because we were coming out of the 80s. 80s were not fun times on the farm. And so anything else looked appealing. And we had a dairy farm. I certainly was not going to milk cows.
I thought you said real quick.
I don't do much of anything when it comes to telling stories real quick. But I started a repair shop. And from the repair shop, I added a towing business and a used car dealership. And that all expanded as I did that for 12 years. As I transitioned out of that into insurance, I, with a good friend of mine, one day went to supposed to be a motivational event day. And we hired a business coach to teach us how to flip houses. My first coach ever.
You were motivated.
Yep, it was my first coach ever. It was $26,500, and we borrowed that money off of other people's credit cards.
That's entrepreneurship.
Not solid
right there.
advice, but we did make the money back on the first deal that we did.
Fantastic.
And we darn near lost our friendship over it. But we're still best of friends today because we were able to work through all that. So that was my first experience with a coach. So I've also bought and sold a lot of real estate over the years. And then with insurance, I've acquired, I've either started or acquired 10 different insurance agencies. And we did a lot of mergers and acquisitions, even helped some others with those if we weren't directly involved. And it was out of that need that we were kind of melding offices together and personnel that we brought in our own coach.
Right.
And I know often people wonder, do you believe in what it is that you do? Well, I wouldn't be doing this if it hadn't been for a coach.
Right.
And as we got through the situation he was helping me with, he just asked, what's our biggest pain point? And my biggest pain at the time was to see young business owners start out and then suffer and struggle and fail and be totally demoralized and beat down and carry that stigma the rest of their life as a failure. So we started out just with the intent of helping one or two.
Right.
And, that's been years ago. I still work with the very first client that we ever had. And it just morphed into something beautiful, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sold off all my insurance agencies and really.
Congratulations.
Yes, that's a big one.
That is huge.
And then I'm also reducing a lot of my real estate just to be very focused on serving others. Back to the mission of what I'm about is about helping others reach their potential.
Right.
So the coaching part is what really intrigues me. What are some experiences you've had that led you to this point?
Well, I was in college working on my degree for communications,
Yes.
publication, or public relations. And I was in Cedar Falls, took a year off after my third year, and needed to just gather who I was, gather some things up, and was going to start back. So in between starting back to college, I had moved back home, got a job that was just a job.
Right.
And then one day I had walked into local insurance agent's office to get my own insurance started or pay it, one or the other. And he said, the owner said, "Listen, what are you doing right now?" I said, "Oh, I'm kind of working up at the mall, just make some money until I go back to college." And he says, "Well, I want to go to lunch and somebody needs to answer these phones." So started my career in insurance. That was not expected, not wanted. Nobody wants to be in insurance, I don't
Right.
think.
Not many. They either grew up in it where a family
Yeah.
member was involved
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
somebody guided them that way.
Yeah. But he was very good to me. I was able to complete my degree and going back and forth to college, worked there, and it just kept going from there, I guess. I trained people
Well, wait
under
a second
me.
here. Let's go back to when words mean things. We talk about that a lot. We've already talked about that. When he asked what you were doing right now, he meant that immediate moment.
He meant like right now.
He was
I'm hungry
and I want lunch.
You're here. Like, what is your? It
And
wasn't
you
what
didn't-
is your life goal?
Right. It's like, you're here and I need you right now.
Yeah. But he quickly realized that I could do a lot more than just answer the phones.
Right.
And funny story, his wife was trying to show me one day how to turn the computer on. And I'm over here going, "Oh dear Lord, she's wasting her time. How many of these small tasks are we going to have to?" So I was quickly able to catch on to their system that they still weren't real sure how to use.
Right.
So I was teaching them things, and I still had my other job at the time. So when he started calling me at my other job, "Heather, how do we do this? Where's the note that you left for this client? What was I supposed to do?" We had the conversation that, yeah, this isn't working. You calling me at my other job.
Like, I have to work here.
Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, you're right. You need to come on full time here." So yeah, I learned a lot there.
Right.
I really did. And I learned a lot about people too, because at the time I was 21 and I'm calling up a lot of farmers. They're calling into
Right.
us rather.
Right.
And when they hear a little girl on the phone, essentially, doesn't really sound like she knows what she's going to, or she
Right.
doesn't sound like she knows what she's doing just because of I'm a little
Age,
girl.
Right.
Yes.
You're young.
So they'd have to talk to the boss. The boss would quickly put me back on the phone because I knew what I was doing and he didn't know what was going on with this person. So people did finally come to realize that, no, Heather is the one that I need to talk to.
You did have to learn to build trust.
I definitely had to learn to build
Right.
trust, but it was pretty easy.
Right.
I always kind of got a kick out of the ones that would call in the first time and hear my voice and like, nah, you can't help me. I literally heard, no, you can't help me. And then the phone would come back to me soon.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, they're eating a little crow there. But through that, I trained people. I learned a lot of different things there, which I finally did want to move on,
Right.
try something different. I thought that maybe marketing is what I wanted to get into. And we had a lady that would come into the office often, and they were opening a new location,
Right.
and they needed someone to do their marketing for them. And I said, you know what? How about me? And she's like, are you serious? Like, that's a great idea. Like, okay, worked out. I was hired, worked in that industry for, I think, 18 months, but it was not ethical.
Right.
I did not enjoy that part. I felt like I had to stand up for our customers all the time. So it just wasn't a good fit.
Right.
So,
Another lesson, another thing we talk about is customer service, ethics, having your core values and your mission statement for each
Yep.
company that we work with.
yep.
That way your employees clearly know what's expected and how to treat clients.
And the leadership there was pretty much non-existent too. And as an employee, you can feel that. It affects you when your leader doesn't know how to lead. So I had no confidence. So it was time to move on. And at that point, I had several offers to go back to insurance.
Right.
I had offers to start my own arm of agencies. I still didn't love insurance though.
Right.
It's not for me. So I found one where I liked the vision. I liked the direction. I could tell there was leadership and there was something bigger, and I could do things other than just answer the phone and deal with the upset customers.
Right.
So
So out of that, I just want to draw a little attention to that is for those listening. One of the things that drew you back was the fact that there was leadership there.
Yep.
There was a vision and a purpose there.
Yep.
There was opportunity for growth
Yes.
and for other experiences there. Anybody that owns a business, if you really want to attract good people, you've got to
Cast the vision.
cast the vision, and they've got to understand they don't expect perfection from any leader. They just want to have freedom to perform in whatever capacity, because a lot of times employees will be better in niche areas than the owner ever is.
Right.
Just back to your first job. It's why he sent them back to you, because some of the things you could do, they couldn't do.
Right.
And that's typical in every small business. So,
Well, and another thing, the first one really didn't know how to allow the person to be involved in the community and how
Right.
that involvement is positive and leads to growth. And the next time I was in insurance, it was pushed out to be involved in this, and
Right.
And it gave you more worth as well.
to be involved in the community and be exposed and try to expose the brand that you were working for.
Yeah.
Another reason, I guess, so those experiences that led you to where you're at today, working with people, you went to school for a communications
Yep.
degree, and looking at possibly doing some event planning and
Yeah.
things like that. As you take all those experiences, though, what it come down to, what I'm hearing you say is the fact that you enjoy working with people and making a difference in somebody else's life.
Yeah, I live for the aha moments, because we all have so much self-doubt, and I do. I'm like, how am I going to really help this person? And then when I start talking to them, it's like I underestimate myself,
Right.
which we all do. But when people just get a different perspective, point of view on stuff, and
Like when we started this episode, you weren't
Yeah.
sure what you were going to say.
yeah, I never do. But Yeah, when you get those different perspectives and I'm able to help someone with that and help them work through it, it's very fulfilling.
It is. It's very fulfilling. So I would like to challenge everyone that if you're listening to this, the thing to really, I would come back to a couple of key things. And it's in my 12 Steps book in the very first chapter. Have a life mission or purpose statement, one of those two. Figure out your core values. That would be the second thing to do. Figure out what it is that you're going to function within your life. You're going to have integrity. You're going to be honest. You're going to be prompt. You're going to be courteous, whatever. Name 5, 6 of those. And then you can start to set your goals. But if you set those first two, it's going to make it much easier. And I know one thing you and I share is it's all about serving people. Our core values align. And that's why we want to help others and serve others. And our purpose on the podcast is to develop stories, or I should say, tell stories, and get people to share what experiences they went through that are going to motivate and give people courage to step out and really make a difference in their own life to start to impact those that they're around every day as well.
And I will say that on our podcasts, we try to get a different variety of people. So not every podcast is going to be every listener's cup of tea.
Right.
But there's going to be somebody out there that's going to learn something from that particular or connect.
Or that guest.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of topics that you and I can talk about like this, just in open forum, and I know it is. One thing I guess our goal today was to share with people more of our background and where we come from and tell some of our story. That'll be something that'll probably happen more throughout the next number of months, is that piece of it. But it really, really makes a difference in our life too when we can go out and listen to somebody else's story and help direct us in that direction. What's something that you feel you've learned from hosting this podcast?
First of all, I'm just going to put this out here. I have learned that I have a resting bitch face. I did not realize that I had that. Did you know I had a resting bitch face? Yeah.
I've noticed it through the podcast. Otherwise, I wouldn't have noticed it.
And I feel like I'm engaged, but my face does not show that.
You got that frozen stare, that icy stare, and you're just like.
But one thing that I have really taken away from our podcasts thus far is to not go into them with a closed mind, because there's been many times that I'm like, I'm not sure what we're going to get out of this. And then we get going and talking to this person. And it's like, wow, that is not what I thought.
You're talking about judging the guest before they're ever on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a life lesson there.
Right. It is.
Because we so often make quick assumptions about people we meet and how they're going to be and how we're going to interact. And I'm going to pick on our one producer here. I didn't know him at all. And so the producer that started shooting everything for us, I remember the first time he sent James to us.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't do that again. And now I'm like, I hope James is here today.
Yeah.
And it's that whole thing of just becoming comfortable. And it's just, I didn't know that person. And I think it's so unfair when we judge people just because we don't know them. And
we're not used to.
It's not fair, but the fact is, from a human perspective, it's just human nature, because we all like to be in a comfortable environment.
Right.
And what makes us comfortable is familiarity, which is the things we know.
That's what I am most comfortable with. I am such a high S and you're a high D, and you throw in that chaos and the change all the time. Whew.
I know.
We spoke about this. I'm not sure if it was on this one, or another one, but when you say creating chaos or drama,
right. That was here.
Not always drama necessarily, but for me, sometimes it's been chaos because, just got used to this system. Now no, we're going to go this direction because you love change.
Action creates action.
Yeah.
And if you have more action, you have more excitement and more growth and more development.
And I'm digging my heels in going, no,
I know.
let's make this work.
And you didn't think-
until I don't.
I know. No,
Until I don't.
you're supportive of all that and you go with it well. But I think it's one thing that I just see that as I look forward, I realize now my personality, as we talked about earlier, is to look down the road and miss the short-term details where you're more focused on what needs to happen in the short term. So anything you want to leave the audience with?
Well, you started with why you got into coaching.
Okay.
I'm not sure that you mentioned the,
Yes, I can
you
expound
didn't
on
like
that.
the other companies. You saw small businesses starting and they weren't working. And then what?
I will go on to say this and a lot more. I mean, I shared a little bit an early part, and this is part of the story that if you've heard me speak, you've probably heard some of these things already. As I go throughout the next year, probably I'm going to start to tell a lot more stories about some of my experiences. And I've been threatening to do it. And one of these days I will do it. I'm working on it, but I'm going to have a speech that's going to be nothing but about all my failures. And I don't know that it's fair to call them that because I've learned from each one. Like when I take these, I'm jotting them down and I'm going, okay, I learned this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And so my purpose is to help others reach their full potential. That is my mission statement. Well, that's not exactly my mission statement, but it is to serve others and leave this world in a better place and have, healthy relationships and help people reach their potential. That is why I coach. That is why I now understand that I always had to take the hard road. I'd ask myself, why do you have to take the hard road? Like Yogi Berra says, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Well, I made sure I took the hard one. I didn't just take the fork. I took the whole intersection out on me. And it was just, there's a lot of times like that I look back, I took the hard road, but what I have learned has given me so much experience because I'll sit down and they'll like, well, I know you had this background, so you probably don't know what we're talking about in construction. I'm like, you want me to come frame your house, plumb it, wire it? You want me to do your books? I've done all of that. So I've had a very broad range of experience. Culturally growing up in the 80s, my mother always said, if you keep hopping jobs, like if you hop jobs and change things, nobody will trust you and you'll never have work.
Yeah.
Was great advice coming from her parents to her because coming out of the Depression, it was so hard to find a job.
Right.
So we see those cycles and trends happen. And I think it is beneficial for us to go back. You alluded a little bit about your childhood. I talked some about mine. But I think it's even wise for any person to go back and do a little history and research and go, what did my grandparents experience? And what were my great-grandparents like?
Mm-hmm.
And then if we can break down, like Generation X, when I came along, we were going to be the biggest losers. And then it just kept going, then you had the millennials and all these things. But what I'm learning is each generation has so many strengths.
Right.
But culturally, our world has changed. And it's like the next generation is so much more adaptable, just like what you were talking about. You understood computers and how to use these systems.
Yeah.
So it made you more valuable. So for somebody to say your generation was not going to be successful was completely wrong, just like it would be wrong for us to say that about millennials and now each of the next ones that they call out, because technology and everything is changing with it. So, but the reason I coach, back to your question.
Oh, good. I was wondering.
Is simply to serve others.
Yep.
That is I will do that to the day I die. I'll never, I will slow down and probably do it in different capacities, not as many hours, but I will never stop. Anything I do, I always try to figure out how this is going to benefit another person. So I know I'm here for service. Does that answer your question?
I believe it does.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of Mindset Growth Podcast. We hope you appreciated it. If you have any other topics or things that you want Heather and I to address, just please send us a message and let us know. We are happy to be vulnerable and discuss those and share our experiences. We hope you enjoyed this episode.